Oh, you're calling me on Telegram? Nice.
It's the next to that minimize button. It always
Yeah.
throws me off. Stupid thing.
Let me just pop Do Not Disturb mode on there. There we go.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you can hear us and see us. We'll be starting in now, basically. We need to start. So, got lots to talk about today. So, let's get on with it.
I'm gonna bring up the sound recorder. I'll just assume it's working.
Safe bet.
Why is it on the last recording? Weird. Oh well, whatever. Bring up the show notes. All right, I'm now recording. Wait, no, I'm not. There we go. All right, I'm now recording.
I'm now recording as well.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 299 for February 10th, 2023. Hey everyone, Deanna Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another AI-centric podcast where we're going to talk all things AI and probably some Windows 11 as well. As some of you may have noticed, Microsoft had a big event this week, so we'll go over all the news there, its implications, and what other things we've learned. And then Zach will talk about the latest stuff in Windows 11, as there have been some updates there as well. And I'll talk a little bit about the new Samsung Galaxy Book Pro 3. Yes, that's its full name. And the new Galaxy Ultra 23 Ultra. They got to get these names
Dan?
a little bit shorter. But I do have both of them, and so I'll give you some of my quick impressions of that. And if, to be honest, this AI stuff will take up most of the podcast. So buckle up, folks. Let's get to it. Zach, how are you doing on this fine Friday?
I am not too bad. It was a pretty busy / hectic week for us. Almost kind of like a surprise. You know, this event that Microsoft held this week was unknown to the public, at least, until when was it? Like Friday night or Saturday? So it was like, a weird time to announce it.
Yeah, we had like a week heads up or something.
So we knew about this event last week. Last week's podcast, we already knew about the event, but we weren't allowed to talk about it. And then I think like Microsoft just emailed us like at 1 a.m, like, hey, you can start talking about the event now. I have no idea what that was, but I think honestly it kind of felt a little bit scrambly because Google was announcing stuff around its AI efforts, which we'll talk about a bit in a minute. So Microsoft wanted to get ahead of that message and start sort of promoting that they were doing an event. Obviously, it wasn't live streamed, unfortunately, which is a curious choice. I'm not too sure why they didn't live stream it, because it would have been worthy of a live stream. I think you can agree.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't either. I don't know, even the demos they did on stage weren't necessarily live.
That's right. Yeah, they were simulated, pre-recorded demos.
Yeah, so there was no risk of like something not working. It was a small event, so yeah, I know some people didn't go in the press because Microsoft in the invite didn't tell us what it was about. They were just like, we're doing a thing, come out to Redmond and we'll tell you. And that's all we got out of them. So a lot of, budgets are tight for companies. Plus it was short notice, like a week's heads up. And so some publications just, couldn't go. But a lot were there, actually. Engadget was there. The Verge was there in full force. Of course, we were there. And so, yeah, it was a cool event, though. But it was small. There's probably about 100 people, maybe a little bit less than 100 in the media, including, some professional organizations and their camera people and everything. But, yeah, I got there Monday night. And then I got to my hotel, went right to bed, and got up at 7 a.m. the next morning. And then they shuttled us off to the campus, and we just went straight into the executive briefing center. And we had some nice coffee and food and everything. And then we sat down, and then, the event started. It was about, an hour and 15 minutes long, and that included some Q&A with the audience. And then we broke off, and we got to go talk to the people behind it and got to see it in action and ask questions and stuff. They also had an amazing lunch for us. They had some really good catering. I was going to photograph it because I went back like 2 or 3 times for their food. It was so good. But no one wants to hear about that. But then and then we had, I can't talk about it, but we had an off the record reception for 2 hours with a bunch of Microsoft people, and there were some pretty high profile people that were there. And uh, you know, was Panos was there, and it was cool. And they had liquor, which was cool. So, but I can't talk about anything we talked about because it was off the record. But it was a
Right.
neat opportunity to sort of ask some further questions and get more context around what Microsoft was thinking and all that, which was kind of fun. It was just also nice seeing people. I got to see Donna Sakar, who some of you may know. She used to be with the Windows Insider program, and now she's doing a lot of the uh, ability stuff with Microsoft and adaptive technologies for people with, I don't want to say disabilities. I forgot what the PC term is, challenging modalities. I don't know. But she was great seeing her because I haven't seen her in quite a few years. But so it was nice to catch up with a lot of people. But let's get to the news itself. So yeah, this was kind of what we expected. And by the way, so there were two, options here in terms of what we were thinking Microsoft was going to talk about during this event. It was either going to be AI or it was going to be like metaverse. Those are the only two things I could think of. There was no like, oh, this is a Surface event or it's going to be like
Right.
Windows Phone. None of that was ever on the radar for us. And I really thought it was AI because there was so much news building up around it. There was a report that Microsoft is going to be not only integrating into Bing, it's going to happen actually within weeks and all this. And so all this news was building up. So we were pretty sure it was AI. And so we got there and, Satya Nadella got on stage and he got to talk about, what they were doing and their long-term plans. And we have it all in our live blog with some, I like to think, some stellar photos. So it's pretty close to the stage. So they came out really nice. And Zach helped with that as well. But so the long and short of it is, yeah, so AI is coming to Bing. So what does that really mean? So everybody knows about kind of OpenAI and ChatGPT at this time. And this is ChatGPT, and yet it's not. And so I want to break up some of the confusion here and sort of explaining what's going on. So around 2020, Microsoft started working with OpenAI. Uh, and specifically, they built a supercomputer, which there are only like 5 of these in the world. And they used it with OpenAI specifically for training these AI models, because that's what you needed. You need a supercomputer to feed in all this data and get this stuff working. So they've been doing this for many points. And they're one of the few companies that has the resources, including Azure, to make all this happen. And everybody knows ChatGPT. If you go to OpenAI and you can use the free thing, people are generating all kind of stuff. And this is based on that technology, but I say based on it. It is not a one-for-one copy, far from it. In fact, the rumor is, and it basically is, built off of a GPT-4 kind of thing. Again, Microsoft won't call it that, but that's what it could be thought of as 4.0. And they took that and then they built even more stuff onto it to make it relevant for search. And okay, so what does that mean? So, and this is what's referred to as the Prometheus model. So the Prometheus is another language modeling system that's similar to ChatGPT, but it's Microsoft's own work. Zach, by the way, why do you keep flickering in and out and going
Done.
into
It's
video?
finished. I fixed it. Don't worry.
Okay. Uh, but so Prometheus is their own version that kind of borrows stuff from OpenAI. So it does things. So this is how it differs from ChatGPT. For instance, if you ask it a query to research something, it'll give you the answer and summarize it, but it will also annotate the information as it comes in with a little 1 and a 2 and a 3, just like a book report or if you're reading a book with citations. And then you can hover over one of those numbers and it'll give you the full link of the source. So you can go back and actually read where that information came from, both in case you want a deeper view of it or also you just want to verify the source. And that's something ChatGPT doesn't do. It's also got, it's built around search and Bing and this idea of like fetching information, which ChatGPT kind of does, but GPT is also just more about a chatting program. So it does that. And there's a lot of elements to it. So it's built into Bing. And how it works, though, is you could do a basic search in Bing and it'll still do a basic search. But if you ask it to do a deeper thing and it hits like a certain threshold for this, it's going to get passed on to this Prometheus model, which then goes to their bigger chat systems in Azure, which requires way more processing. And we'll talk about that in a second, and the cost there that's involved with it, because I know a lot of people have questions about it. But so they're not using this for everything, and that's one reason why they can save money with it. Uh, So you have that model and it's the chat thing. And another cool thing that this does that ChatGPT doesn't do is it gives you suggestions based on the thing you asked. And this is really good because to be in a conversation, like if you're, it's kind of weird to be looking at your screen and like, all right, well, what do I ask it? And then, so you type in something and it'll give you the response, but then it's going to like suggest other things you can ask if you want to go deeper, and you just click it and it'll just go and do that. And it's all contextual. You could actually just type in something else and it's going to base that search on the previous thing you asked. You don't need to like reformulate the question. And this is really good because it keeps user engagement much higher. I made the analogy, it's very much like Wikipedia. You like, maybe you hear of a band, and so you go to the band's website or Wikipedia page and you start reading about it and you're like, oh, this person's in that band, I didn't know. Then you click their Wikipedia page, and next you know, you're clicking the band's discography and you read about albums and then the meaning of the song, and and next thing you know, you're an hour into this and you've like gone off into this web of learning about all this stuff. I do this all the time. That's what this kind of does, is it gives you a way to sort of get even more information, even if you didn't think of it. And it's really good in that sense of being like a knowledge engine. Microsoft uses the specific phrase here, co-pilot for the web. That's what they're kind of calling it. And that's exactly what it is. So if you just go to bing.com, right? And you can sign up for this, by the way. If you go to bing.com/new, you can sign up, and they're letting people in every day, every week, and months going forward. Right now, they're trying to get feedback. They're trying to balance server load with the amount of questions people are asking. They're also training the model and making adaptations. That's the other thing with Prometheus, is it has a lot of guardrails in it so that it does things that Microsoft wants and that OpenAI wants, versus what they don't. And this is one reason why OpenAI and Microsoft get along so well, is they're both ethically on the same page about how this technology should be rolled out. So here's an example. If you go to ChatGPT and you ask it, hey, write me an essay on whatever topic you want, it will. If you go to Bing, it won't do that for you. But what it does do is give you like tips for doing an outline on that topic. It'll give you some bullet points and references that you can go do it. So it's, that's like the ethical thing to do, right? You don't want this thing doing homework for people, or cheating, or it doesn't do deception either. Like if you ask it to write a letter to trick someone into doing something, like it won't do that. And so this is all the stuff they've been trading on. Microsoft calls this responsible AI. They have a whole division in the company that's all they do. And if you type in responsible AI in Microsoft, you'll go to their homepage and you can read their documents about what they consider to be, responsible in this field. And they have a bunch of, bullet points and goals that they're trying to do here so that the stuff stays safe. And of course it'll be adapting, and they brought in outside people, research scientists and linguists and stuff like that to help them with this terminology. So that's kind of cool. But I would say the bigger news, or related to this, is they also announced a new version of Microsoft Edge, and you can actually go get this right now. If you go to it's Microsoft the Dev channel, so you just type in Microsoft Edge Dev, you can go and download it. And so this has the newer UI layout. It's more rounded. It's more Windows 11-ish. Some of this had already been in Edge. If you went into flags, you can kind of turn it on. A lot of this stuff is already turned on. I will also say they did some work on the back end of the browser. Like the browser itself feels way faster than the current Edge. It's actually really nice. So forgetting about this Bing stuff, it's just a better version of Edge and just looks nicer as well. But the thing there is they have the new Bing button in the upper right corner. They also moved your MSA picture to the upper left-hand corner, which is a nice move. But if you hover over Bing, it just then opens up this sidebar. And there are like 3 things in there. And I have it in front of me. There's a chat window. So it says Discover. There's Chat, Compose, and Insights. All right, so chat is sort of like, when you go to the Bing page, you can do a search, but then there's actually a button up there that says chat, and it goes into the chat mode, and you can start asking it questions. Compose actually gets you things like, there's a window that says write about, then you can select a tone, which includes professional, casual, enthusiastic, informational, or funny. You can pick the format, paragraph, email, blog post, or ideas, which is bullet pointed. You can choose the length, short, medium, or long. So what you do is you type in something like, ask Zach if he wants to go to dinner tonight and, if he's okay with Indian food and, da, da, da. And you can write that and then you can pick funny as the tone. And you can do email and then choose short and it'll generate a, a draft for you. And then you can literally just copy and paste that into your email right there. Or you could do it in Twitter. Or you can do it on LinkedIn. Anything that has like something that you can write in, like you can use this to compose. And it's also like you can edit it. And that's what they're kind of hoping people do is like, all right, but you can build off of it. And that's going to be super powerful if you think about it. You could just keep this open while you're in Outlook.com or Gmail, and you can just use this to like respond to emails. Insights just simply gives you insights about the page you're looking at. So it's like Q&A about the page topics that gives you related content. It's called More For You based on the whatever is on that page. There's related searches. And then there's a thing about the site, including analytics and where the traffic comes from. So it's all about insights about the page you're looking at, which is good if you want to sort of verify the source. You want to know, like, is this a legitimate website? Do they get a lot of traffic? All that kind of jazz. Now, the biggest feature, I think, besides the compose is super valuable, but chat is really interesting because one of the cool things you can do is it's contextually aware of the web page you're on at the time when you have this little side chat brought out. So you can be like, hey, summarize this web page I'm looking at. So like say you're reading like a really long essay or something like that, you could just be asked it to summarize. And the thing will just bullet point and summarize what you're looking at, which is really cool. And then you can do whatever you want. You can copy and paste that, or you can just ask further questions on that topic. Like, and this works for anything. Like if you had a PDF, say you had a 30-page document that was a financial document based on a company, and it was just all sorts of numbers and charts and all this kind of stuff. You could be like, summarize that. And it'll summarize it all into bullet points. Like this is going to save so much time and resources for people where, it's literally the TLDR of the web, but it does it in such a smart way that you can just, you can even go through warranties. That was one example, like those really long warranties for something that you bought. It'll summarize that for you and give you all the main points. So you don't have to read 40 pages of legalese, and it'll basically summarize it. So to me, that's sort of one of the more popular things. It also gives you examples, like ask complex questions. What are some like you can ask this, like what are some meals I can make for my picky toddler who only eats orange colored food? Like you can ask that, and it'll give you suggestions, and then it'll give you like a bunch of dishes that you can do, and then you're like, all right, give me the recipe for those dishes, and it'll give you the full recipe, and it'll give you all the ingredients and all the measurements and all that stuff. Get creative inspiration. Write a haiku about crocodiles in outer space and the voice of a pirate. Like it will do that if you want it to. Or rewrite text together. Try selecting text from the page to see what we can do together. This feature requires permission approval. So you can basically, let's say I can actually try that right now. I'm on a Microsoft page. And let's see, how would I actually, I don't even know how I do it. I guess I would hit rewrite this text. We'll see if it does anything. But there's like all sorts of options you can do with this stuff. And so this is just, I think, super powerful in terms of the browser and helping people out in terms of what you can do. I don't know. It's pretty transformative. But you also have to, go to this thing and have specific questions you want to ask. But the specificity in the things you can ask is pretty crazy what you can do. So that was the gist of it. When it rolls out, like I said, weeks, months, it's just they're pretty quick to roll this out. I mean, they just want feedback and make sure their servers are handling it all. There is there'll be ads here and there, just like in any search thing, which is normal. That's how one way they're paying for this, because as some people know, using ChatGPT is very resource intensive in terms of the calculations and need to be done in the cloud. It literally costs a couple cents, I heard, for every query. Microsoft is doing a couple things around that. One is it's sort of like it's ad supported, but two, they're also optimizing Azure, so it is actually more efficient. They've also mentioned that over time, this will become even more efficient and the costs will come down. And you can bet they haven't announced it yet, but they're going to tie this into probably Microsoft 365, and enterprises who pay for things will get even faster processing, and they'll be in the front of the line. It's not slow though, it's like, but it's kind of almost real time, but it's still pretty quick. It is faster than ChatGPT. Um, I think the bigger news was during the investor call, their CFO, Amy Hood, threw out this number, which kind of blew my mind. She was talking about how important search is to Microsoft, even though they're really far behind compared to Google. And she threw out this number saying that for every percentage point that Microsoft gains in search market share, and they have been gaining every quarter, it's a little bit, but they have been making progress and gaining. For every point, 1 point that they get in search, they gain about $2 billion in annual revenue, which is a lot of money. And so, if you imagine they even just got 5 points over the next couple of years, that's 10 billion extra dollars. And that's doable. Will they ever be able to beat Google? Oh, of course not. There's no way they're going to ever catch Google and surpass them. I mean, I guess technically it could be possible, but Google would really have to really screw up badly for that to happen. But they don't need to do that. They just need to gain market share, and they're going to get way more data. They'll gain way more revenue coming in, and it'll be better for their ecosystem. So I think that's super important. They also mentioned about how the fact that they are behind, and so far behind, that they can take bigger risks. They can innovate faster than Google can, because Google has to be careful about what they're doing here so they don't screw it up, which kind of happened a bit this week already. And so they have to be careful, where Microsoft's like, well, if they screw up, it's not like they have a ton of market share anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And they can just roll out technologies a lot more quickly. And so that gives them this flexibility. And they said that. They said, you're going to see us innovate in the space rapidly because we can, and we don't have to, we can take risks here because of our market position. It's totally fine. So this is really a big deal for Microsoft. Satya Nadella in a CBS interview noted, when asked about the deleterious possible effects of AI, and the dystopian view of what could happen, he said, like, that's why we're starting with search. He's like, search is kind of like the user is basically always in control of the situation. It can close the window and all this. And the worst that could happen is you get some information that's not completely accurate. That's not great, but it's not like putting AI in control of your car, or some sort of medical equipment, or something else that controls something in the world that could directly impact you physically. So this is a much safer place to start with AI. That said, this story came out today, and this was openly talked about on the floor. Yeah, this stuff is going to roll out into Outlook and Office and Word and PowerPoint and like all of Microsoft's other platforms. Nadella basically said that on stage. People on the floor were like, oh yeah, of course that's going to happen next. They've already announced with Teams a feature that you and I saw like 4 years ago, which was like the Office of the Future, where there was a Microsoft Teams meeting and a bunch of people were in there, and this AI was recording the meeting and translating it to text, also while identifying each speaker and putting their names down, and then taking that entire meeting and summarizing it into bullet points and actionable tasks that can then be shared with others. So if you missed the meeting, or you just wanted a recap of the meeting, you can get the summarization. That's rolling out in a couple of weeks. So it's no surprise that they're building this technology into everything, but I think the bigger surprise is how quickly this is going to come. It's going to come in the next couple of weeks and months. And the thing that's important about AI that people need to remember is it improves exponentially very quickly. I think of the cell phone and smartphones. They first came out in like 2005, 2004. We had Trios and then Blackberries. And it was 2007 that the iPhone landed. But it wasn't until about 2012 when smartphones hit like really kind of mainstream. That is, it hit like more than 50% of users. So it was a very slow adoption. And even then, it took many years for that form factor to get good and for everything to kind of catch up with it. You're not going to see that with AI. This is not like, well, in 2-3 years, AI is going to be really nice. Like, you're going to see this improve it in real time, basically, because that's how these training models work. And so the more people are using it, the more data comes in, the more accurate it becomes. And so you're going to see this technology really, really become a big deal in computing. I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that this is the biggest innovation and change in computing in the last 20 years since the actual advent of the internet, which is technically even older. It really is. It's going to really transform everything. And Microsoft, since they have so many software platforms, between Office and Teams and OneDrive, and they have Azure, they own their own cloud infrastructure. They're going to probably do the most with it. Yeah, Google is going to do a lot. They'll do it with search. They'll probably put it into Android. But that's about it, right? Where else are they going to put this stuff? Apple, we have no idea what they're doing in this area. They've been very quiet. They don't have their own cloud computing, and Siri isn't really demonstrating, and Apple, is not, and they don't have anything to do with search either. Yeah, Facebook and Meta are there, but they're doing stuff kind of internally using some tools. But again, it's going to be limited to just Facebook. But Microsoft, I think, has the biggest potential here for this technology. And I think that's really kind of the big story here. But Zach, I've riffed a lot here. What are your thoughts on some of what was announced and what was shown off?
It's fascinating. It's when you watch it in action, it is amazing the way it can understand your natural language and reply with natural language itself is interesting. The idea on paper doesn't make sense because it's like, why would you want to chat with somebody about search results? But when the demos Microsoft provide kind of give you the context of, well, what you can do is you can sort of mash multiple queries together and talk to Bing as if it was an assistant, and the assistant is doing the the Bing searches for you, and then bringing back information and presenting it to you like a message in a chat bubble. That's essentially what it's doing. So it doesn't actually replace search. Like Dan said, if you do a normal search in Bing, you will still get a page of links and you can click through the links and stuff, which is very handy. Not every search needs to be something that an assistant handles, right? Especially if it's only one thing you're looking for. If you just type Windows 11 into Bing, for example, you'll get, all the relative links, like the most recent headlines and stuff. That doesn't make sense to be a conversation. But if you're looking for flights to a certain country around these dates, specifically looking to do this, that, and the other on your vacation, that is where this AI comes in handy, because at that point, that the AI can go ahead, look for flights, look for information, look for hotels, look for activities to do on those dates, how the weather's going to be, etc., and give you all those answers as a reply, almost like a human. If you read some of the things it says, it does sound like a personal assistant. It writes like a human being, more so than even the virtual assistants we have today, like Google Assistant or Siri or Cortana or Alexa. They are, they're almost very robotic still, and how you talk to them is very robotic. They only understand certain queries, whereas this Bing AI, you can talk to it like a person. You can sort of be all over the shop, and it will pick out specific parts and sort of mash together what it thinks you want as an answer. It's very, very clever in that way. Now, of course, there are lots of concerns around plagiarism, which has always been the case with AI. AI from the essentially day one has been, how does it train its data? Oh, it uses other people's work, so it technically plagiarism through and through. I think Getty? Some company is being sued for programming their picture AI when you generate pictures using their material stuff, and I think a few images were generated with like the Getty logo generated into the photo, which is a big mistake. But that's a great example of AI not exactly being intelligent. It is artificial intelligence, but it's not intelligent artificial intelligence. It's just doing what it's learned. It's scraping the internet for things. While Microsoft does have parameters for what it should and shouldn't do, it's still not a perfect thing. Like, I've already seen people break it, for example. If you mash the same query multiple times, sometimes it will give in and just give you what you want, regardless of if it's not allowed to or not. Like Dan said, for the example, the essay one, it's not supposed to generate essays for you. But I saw someone, if you mash the same command enough, write me this essay about X, it will eventually write you the essay. And I'm not sure why what's happening in the code where that finally gets sort of enabled for the assistant to do that. But that's fascinating to me, how it's like it's not supposed to, but it actually might sometimes, maybe.
So, and I just want to highlight that for a sec, because you're going to see a lot of, I don't know how to describe it. I don't want to be kind of mean, but just superficial, dumb reporting on this stuff in the coming weeks as media start using this more and more. Because you're going to get these sensational headlines like, I got, Bing to do this, and I got it to do that, and it wasn't supposed to do this, and it did. You will see that, and it'll be funny for about 2 seconds because they have a rapid response team that sees these things and they can quickly adjust. And that's what I'm saying. Like all these little flaws will be fixed very quickly. And so while it's kind of funny, it's going to be like very, uh, it's not going to last very long because the AI is just going to improve so rapidly and so quickly that it'll be like a momentarily joke.
Yeah.
I also just want to point out, sorry, that like, so how this works when I highlight something on the web page, I kind of missed it because I was talking at the same time. If you just highlight text, it automatically imports it into the chat. It does it for you. And then it goes, what do you want to do with the text? And it gives you a couple of suggestions: explain, revise, summarize, expand, or ignore. And so if I hit revise, it's going to basically do that. We'll see if it does it now. It says stuff. It might not, because it might not have permission to do it. We'll see what happens with it. Yeah, it looks like nothing's happening. So you're going to see these like little kind of issues and stuff like that. But that's one reason also why they're rolling out, and they didn't just open it up to the world. They're just rolling it out so they can fix these things, get the bugs out of the way. But it's pretty much ready as is. So
yeah. So yeah, real quick, going back to the whole plagiarism thing, one of the things that a few press people brought up, because blogs and news websites will be hit hard by this sort of technology because it does scrape information. If you were to ask it, for example, show me the latest or what's the latest in Windows 11's new build or whatever, instead of presenting you with a link to the change log that Microsoft publishes or a third party site that's detailing the changes in depth, the Bing AI can just scrape those websites and give you an overview of everything without actually taking you to the site. As a result of that, obviously that takes away from traffic for those sites, takes away ad revenue, la. So there's quite a bit of a concern from a number of industries whether or not this is actually going to sort of kill off, say, blogs, so like enthusiast blogs such as Windows Central. Based on the implementation currently, I don't think so, because like I said, it really is a niche. It's not replacing the search experience. The default search experience is still that page of links. And as Dan mentioned, only once you hit a certain criteria for your query does the whole chat experience come to life. So if you are just looking for Windows 11 news, I don't think the chat experience makes sense for that. Because again, why would you want an assistant to pull that info for you? You'd want to look yourself, I imagine. Now, obviously, this could change in the future. The implementation could become the AI is the default, and that's when things become a bit scary. But what's really nice, as Dan mentioned about the Bing stuff, is that it does cite its sources. Everything it pulls into its chat bubbles will be cited. You can highlight any of the text, and it will present you with a link to where it found that information. So that's different from ChatGPT, and apparently Google's AI, which they're working on, called Bard. I think it's called a stupid name, Bard. Theirs isn't citing any sources yet, so it'll put in information, but it won't credit any sources, and that's tricky, not good. Bing AI is obviously built off of the ChatGPT stuff. So Microsoft is enhancing it there for its own service. So that's really good. And also the other really important thing about this AI versus ChatGPT as well is that this AI is up to date. And by up to date, I mean, I believe they train it basically daily, right? Like it's always scraping new data. Whereas ChatGPT, at least 3.5, the current version, was the data only was trained up to 2021. So anything that happened in 2022 and 2023 is not in ChatGPT's mind. So you can't ask it questions about who won X, Y, Z last year because it doesn't know, because it doesn't have that data. Whereas Bing does have today's data and yesterday's data and data now, which is a huge change from the previous AI ones, and which is also why it's more important for Microsoft to be getting the ethics right around trying to be as correct as possible, presenting perhaps sensitive news in a politically correct, I don't know if it's the right word, politically correct manner, things like that. You don't want the chat assistant just telling everyone some horrific incident happened here and going into detail because it found comments on a Reddit thread. That's the kind of stuff it needs to be trained not to do. So it's fascinating technology, and I would be really curious to see where this goes. Obviously, Dan mentioned it's going to be in Office soon, and Microsoft has already teased that Windows is going to be getting more AI stuff in the future. This stuff is almost certainly going to be powering some of that. Windows Search, everyone says Windows Search is bad. Maybe it won't be bad in the future. Maybe AI will fix it.
Oh yeah, I mean, 100%. That's they're going to use it for this stuff. By the way, so as you were talking, I decided to I asked, I was like, tell a joke about how Windows Phone was the greatest phone OS, but regular people were too much of Apple fans to appreciate Microsoft's vision. And so I chose a funny paragraph and a short response, and it says Windows Phone was the greatest phone OS ever created, but sadly, it was too advanced for its time. While regular people were busy playing with their iPhones and Androids, Windows Phone users enjoyed a sleek, elegant, and intuitive interface that seamlessly integrated with their PCs and Xboxes. Yeah. Windows Phone had everything: Live Tiles, Cortana, Office, Skype, OneDrive, and more. It was a phone for the true visionaries, the ones who dared to be different and embrace Microsoft's vision of the future. But alas, the world was not ready for such greatness, and Windows Phone was doomed to be a niche product, misunderstood and underappreciated by the masses. It was a tragedy of epic proportions, a joke that only Windows Phone users could laugh at while crying inside.
Wow, I think it nailed it on the head, to be honest.
Exactly, right? I think every Windows fan would be like, yeah, actually, that's pretty damn right.
Well, that actually brings up my next point. That query you just entered makes no sense for a search engine. And that's the other fascinating thing about this, is that the AI, it acts as a personal assistant. And that, I've had this conversation with Jan earlier, and I've been thinking about it, and I'm turning it into an editorial for the site. But why did they keep this as Bing? Why didn't they rebrand this as something more personal? Like, nobody would have been like, that doesn't make sense, if they announced on Tuesday that Bing is being rebranded to Cortana and then demoed all of this, because it makes sense as that sort of personal assistant, that personal identity. You could say, hey, Cortana, this, that, and the other, and it would reply, unlike old Cortana and other virtual assistants in general, which reply quite robotically in very specific sort of rigid sentences. This thing talks like a human, and it would be insane to hear it talk back to you like a human. Obviously, it would use a synthetic voice, but even those these days are much more human-like. Everyone's heard the sort of TikTok robot voice, which doesn't sound like a robot, right?
God, I hate that voice.
I know, but it sounds like a person, and so synthetic voices, we are at that point where that's not an issue anymore. Now we've also got the language model, right, where it can reply naturally and sound like a human being as well. So why didn't Microsoft just announce this as their new virtual assistant? Be like, hey, this is going to be powering everything now. It's in Windows, it's in Office, it's this, that, and the other. I don't know why they didn't. I know maybe, Dan, you might have some more context for that, but I think that would have been a great idea.
There's, it's safe to assume there's internal debate at Microsoft about how this should be branded. I had the question about, should they anthropomorphize it, right? Make it more human-like.
Yeah.
Should, by giving it a name, having it ask you more personal questions, because doing so would certainly drive up engagement, but then you start getting to some weird ethical areas about people getting attached to this AI. And, we keep referencing the movie Her, which I still have never seen. I'm going to watch it this weekend, but I kind of know that's part of the plot to it, and they have to be kind of careful. What do they name it? Should they name it Cortana? Of course, I know people listening to this podcast are like, of course they should. But then, Cortana is a brand for Halo. Halo is going downhill. Sorry, Zach. Cortana was tried already by Microsoft and is kind of regarded as a failure. So, they could have brought it back, but then it would have, I think, brought up all the negativity that was associated about a failure already. And so they want to kind of steer clear of that. They were asked this publicly and they responded, and there goes my voice. And they responded publicly that, they were proud of the Bing name. And so they just wanted to sort of they looked at this as an evolution of the brand, not necessarily a complete, revision, which is kind of true, right? I mean, it still is just Bing fundamentally.
Yeah,
it's
and also
just Bing plus more.
Yeah, thinking about it as well, that for them to position it as a virtual assistant, it's still actually missing crucial virtual assistant functionalities such as smart home capabilities and all that jazz. It's only good for web queries at this time. Yeah. Obviously, that could change, although I don't see why it would, because Microsoft isn't in that game anymore. But that is probably why they didn't decide to rebrand it Cortana. That said, I still think Bing as a brand is a tarnished one, and a new name would have been better. It doesn't have to be personal. It could have just been a new brand for the search engine. I definitely think that's something they could have at least toyed with, because I just think people, I made this tweet earlier or late last week, whenever I made the tweet, say, I wish I lived in a world where saying Bing it wouldn't result in people laughing at you. And I don't think that's going to change even with this AI implementation. You still say to someone, hey, you should Bing that. They'll look at you and go, you're insane.
Yeah. There's no argument that Bing is just not a great name.
No,
It
it's
just
not
isn't.
exactly.
No matter how cool it gets, it just I mean, and to be fair, Google sounded stupid at first too, but it was sort of quirky and had a thing, and Bing was just like it's goofy, not quirky. I don't know. I think we'll see this technology weaved into Windows, probably Windows 12.
Mm.
I think that's safe to say as well. And I think you may see them toy, with this idea of maybe branding it, or what would be called giving it agency. This idea that it either has like a gender, it's male or female, it has a name, maybe it has like a representation. I, I think they're open to this idea, but in some ways they are. I don't want to say flying by the seat of the pants, but they're kind of feeling this out and seeing how people react to it and feel about it. So, we're going to write some content around this, and I think it'll be crucial for people to kind of voice their opinions about it. Personally, I do think that if you do give it agency, people will engage with it more. But then there's questions about agency, like what do you call it? Like what name is cool? What's versus stupid? And don't forget, it has to translate into other languages, and this is always a challenge because people forget
Mm.
about this. But when you're branding something, you have to think of what that name means in a different language. And sometimes it's like a swear.
Yeah, it
Sometimes
wasn't.
it's something offensive. So they have to be like, so it has to run through this process about, is it offensive in other cultures or languages? Is it a trademarked name already? Some of us remember SkyDrive back in the day, right? That ran into issues. Uh, what about the gender thing, which is kind of a controversial thing? Do you get to pick male, female, neither? They, like where's the voicing come from? And you and I were talking about this before. They could at least now use AI to synthesize
Mm.
voices, including Jen Taylor's, if they wanted to use like Cortana again. Do they give it like a kind of a physical representation, like a little face? And it sounds goofy, but I guarantee you, if you saw sort of like uh, some kind of face or something with an eyes and a mouth, and it responded to you, like you would engage with it more because I don't know how many people know this. A lot of people learn it in college, but the human brain in the occipital area for vision is literally wired to recognize human faces and to basically be attracted to them automatically, which is why if you ever stare at like walls or rugs and you see patterns, you quickly identify what looks like a little face in it, right? And we all see this happen with like, oh, there's Jesus and toast, right? Those kind of things, because we just naturally see faces wherever we go. And there's actually a thing called facial agnosia, where some people get brain damage and they can't recognize faces anymore. So they see you, but they can't name you because they don't recognize it because a face has no features for them that they can remember. So like we're naturally wired to see faces. And when you see faces and you hear a voice that sounds very human, like you will engage with it a lot more than just say looking at a computer. And this is why, I mean, this is exactly why video conferencing is, you know, more important than a phone call, right? Yeah, phone calls served their purpose, but as soon as video calling became a thing too, we like that more. Why? Because you like looking at someone's face, because you can discern emotions, you can get their feeling about it, you can sometimes even understand them better. So I think there's a lot to evolve in this field, and like I said, I don't think Microsoft has figured out all the answers yet. Maybe for search, having it branded as an agent maybe doesn't make sense, right? Because it is it's Search Plus, right? Or they're calling it
Mm.
your co-pilot for the web. So maybe it doesn't make sense there. But if it's something more personal, say your laptop or even your phone, yeah, it maybe starts to make more sense. This is something you'll have on you all the time, you're always interacting with. Maybe there it makes more sense. So I think it's something that you and I and our audience can talk about and maybe put ideas out there. And Microsoft, I'm sure, would listen. I did bring them up in conversations with Microsoft. I'm like, Cortana was an internal name. It was called Z Cortana. It was a
Yeah.
lowercase z, and it was part of Windows Phone testing of that system, but that wasn't its name. That was its code name. What happened was someone lost their phone on like a subway. Someone found it, and we had screenshots of it. It was in our forums. That's where it came from. And we saw the screenshots, and it said Z Cortana, and that's what it was. It was their voice assistant. And the all the fans went like, "Oh my God, just call it Cortana."
Yeah.
Like and then Microsoft heard that, and people internal to Microsoft like, yeah, it's a cool name. We should call it Cortana. And that's how it happened. It wasn't originally supposed to be called that, but due to fans and people wanting it, it did happen. So I'm saying there's some room here for this. And it'll be really interesting to see how it kind of progresses.
Yeah. So I think that's basically all the news coming out of that event. Obviously, you mentioned the new Edge. The new Edge is nice. We talked about something called Edge Phoenix a few weeks back. That is
Right.
part of this. That UI and stuff is part of the Edge Phoenix vision. There is more to Phoenix. The split tabs view is actually in there now as well, which is cool. Which was one of the big sort of Phoenix visions they had. Obviously, the rounded tabs and whatnot. The AI stuff was actually not part of the Phoenix vision, to my knowledge. If it was, I never saw it when I was hearing about it from sources. But it's an addition. It's there now, and it does work. So as you mentioned, it exists in a sidebar. It's very similar to, remember Ask Cortana in old Edge, like UWP Edge. You could like select text and stuff, and you'd press Ask Cortana, then Cortana would float out, and it would give you like context and stuff.
Right.
So it's kind of similar to that, plus with the additional AI stuff now, which is really quite handy. But yeah, like that's pretty awesome. The event itself, you can actually watch now, although it wasn't live streamed. They did upload a sort of video on demand version after the fact. So if you are curious about the announcements and how they presented the features and the event itself, you can go and watch that on YouTube. But yeah, I'm just excited to get access to this. I still am waiting. I've asked Microsoft very politely, and they haven't answered me. So.
And then we should also mention, I guess, Google. Now, yeah, Google's there too. Well, not there, but the next day they had an event, and so the word on the ground at Microsoft during that day from media and other people, and don't forget, people who work at Microsoft on search, some of them came from Google and vice versa, right? They swap people all the time, and so a lot of those people have contacts at Google, and the word was that what Google was doing was basically reacting to how far Microsoft was. And this kind of came out in December. There's a report that there was like a red alert meeting and all this kind of stuff. And so it looks like Google basically threw together some early work that they've been doing and basically saying that like, hey, we're doing this thing. But this was cobbled together. They held the event in Paris, and like, no one in the press went there. And my dog is squeaking her toy again. Hold on.
Oh, Dan stepped away. Yeah, whatever he was saying.
No, so Google's, and the joke was Google posted a video of what they were calling Bard and work off of Lambda, and they asked it a question, and it did like a Chat GPT kind of thing. And there was a couple of things that a lot of people called out on it. For one, it didn't cite any sources, which was just like even worse for publishers. Because you don't know where that info is coming, but maybe they'll add that at some point. Literally just copy what Microsoft is doing. The other thing was one of the answers that it gave was incorrect. Now, I want to be clear here. Like, there's been errors too with Bing. Like on CBS, this interview they did with Satya Nadella, they were doing it and they show it on TV. It made errors, and they're like, oh, but we looked it up and that info wasn't correct, or that place. One of them was like a place in Connecticut. And first of all, it was trying to do a route from, I think it was like New York to Cape Cod. And then it named a place like one of the southern states, which was obviously not in the way. And it's like, and the chat literally said like, oh, I'm sorry. I confused it with this Dunn, Connecticut, I think it was. And it's like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. It caught its own mistake and it said it confused. So that makes sense. Except Dunn, Connecticut also doesn't exist. So don't get me wrong. This stuff does make mistakes. But like I said, these things will correct themselves in time. But Google made this mistake and they put it onto the web and they didn't catch it themselves. And they got hammered for it because their stock plummeted and they lost like $10 billion in stock value or something. I think it was down 8%. That seems a little irrational, but the reason for it, like I said, they'll fix that. That's fine. But the reason for it was it didn't inspire confidence that the number one leader in search in the world is not only seemingly behind Microsoft significantly on this technology. When they demoed it itself, that they also had an error. It didn't inspire confidence in shareholders that like, oh, Google's not really ready for this stuff yet. Now, will they? Will they catch up and like have? Yeah, of course they will. It's Google. They have a lot of talent. They have a lot of money. They're going to do their own thing. But I think at this time right now, Microsoft does have an advantage and they do have a lead. They want to turn that into gaining some market share, but Google's going to be right there. Make no mistake about it. I think their stock will recover. but it's Google's game to lose at this point, and Microsoft has nothing to lose, right? So they're just going to continue going ahead with this. And sometimes I've mentioned this on the podcast before, in technology, for a significant shift to happen, you need really two things. You need one, a type of innovation that no one else has that's really groundbreaking, and then you need the number one market leader to do something really bad and screw up. When you have those two things happen, that's when you start to see displacement and someone else either taking the lead or gaining a lot of market share. Technically, we have those conditions here. It's still too early to say if Microsoft can completely capitalize on that, or maybe Google is going to quickly recover. But we're starting to see that positioning there. So you may see, Microsoft make some significant, at least, gains in mind share with this stuff. And like I said, because they can put this stuff in all their technologies, which they have much more of than Google. Like Google has its own Office stuff, but it's kind of a joke compared to Microsoft's, legacy in this field. And so Microsoft is going to, the stock markets loved what Microsoft's doing, because not only are they innovating quickly, the tech seems already here. And it kind of is. Like I said, you'll see this stuff come to Office, probably Office Insider. I guarantee probably within the next 6 months, if not earlier. And where's Google going to be with this stuff? Probably not there yet. So it's going to be interesting to see how Google responds, and other companies as well. But this is going to be the biggest story. I'm telling you right now. I mentioned it last week, but this is the pivot point in computing. That is just going to be. We're going to look back at this moment, and be like, wow, that's where this stuff really started. Where AI went from being just this kind of weird, silly buzzword and marketing to a reality, and it's going to rapidly, very rapidly, go into all sorts of things. And I think that's going to be really kind of fun to watch.
Yep, I agree. Should we move on to other news of the week? Windows 11 stuff specifically. We won't spend too much time on this, but there was some actual developments in the Windows world this week. So we'll start with the insider build 25295. Am I remembering that right? I believe so. That rolled out to Insider Dev Channel this week. Not too much in the way of official features in the changelog, but still some worthy ones nonetheless. So we'll start with... That's not the build. Sorry, 1 second. I've lost it. There it is. 25295. So the first one is they are finally, and this is something I've been wishing the PhoneLink app had and now will have as a result of this change. They are finally adding smart 2FA recognition to notifications. So when a notification pops in, whether it be an email or a text message or an IM through PhoneLink or installed on your PC, and it's a 2FA code, Windows will analyze that notification, and if it spots what it thinks is a 2FA code, it will present a button in the notification that allows you to copy the 2FA code directly to your clipboard. That is awesome, and that's basically something, the iPhone and Android's been doing for a long time. Windows is now catching up and is adding that functionality, and that's going to be really, really nice. In addition to that, they are also rolling out that extra wide long search bar with the text field in it to everybody in the dev channel now. So if you haven't got it yet, you should now start to see it if you are in the dev channel. Now, what's more interesting is the stuff that wasn't officially announced in this build, but is sort of able via hidden settings, and that is RGB controls. So this is something I actually heard about a while back as a hackathon project last year. There was a team that was sort of toying with the idea of adding universal RGB controls to Windows natively, so you wouldn't need to use third-party, programs from Razer or Logitech or whoever to customize your RGB peripheral. You'd just be able to jump into Windows settings and configure it all from in there. That stuff started showing up in the Insider build this week, and that surprised me because, like I said, I heard about it as a hackathon project. It was codenamed Project Lumi, Lummi, and now it does appear to be something that they are, at the very least, considering shipping as an official feature within Windows as soon as maybe May, the Moment 3 update, which is scheduled for May-June, I believe. And that is sort of showing up now. I don't think it's functional. I think right now it's just the sort of the UI for the settings that are being sort of piped in. But that's the thing they're working on, and that's going to be really, really cool for gamers, especially where they have loads and loads of RGB peripherals, headphones, keyboard, mouse, desk light, you name it. It's all RGB. In theory, assuming those peripherals are updated to support whatever Microsoft is building out here, you'll be able to just use Windows settings and configure everything through there. You'll be able to tie it to things like your accent color within Windows or your wallpaper. And I've heard features that they are considering, which by considering I mean not greenlit, but something they thought about adding at some points, include things like being able to set peripherals to a certain color when your microphone is muted or unmuted, or Teams integration, as always is Teams integration. Being able to set certain notifications from apps on Windows to light up specific peripherals in a certain color, stuff like that. It's all the things that they're considering for this functionality, and the goal really is to sort of make Windows 11 more friendly for gamers. They want to win goodwill with gamers, and adding native RGB controls to the OS would be a great way to do that. So that's something that they appear to be sort of poking around with in the latest dev channel build, and that is really, I think, probably the most exciting feature we've had in a little while, assuming that it actually does ship, because like I said, it's still hidden. I don't think it's fully functional yet, and it hasn't been announced by Microsoft. So yeah, just keep that in mind. But other than that, I believe that's everything for Windows 11 this week. What are your thoughts on the RGB stuff, Dan?
It's cool. Like I love Razer, obviously using their webcam right now. Going to be using their mouse. Going to be using a new keyboard pretty soon. But I'm not a fan of Synapse. Like Synapse is very powerful, don't get me wrong, and you can do a lot of customization with it. But it's a big app to load, and I don't, it's a little pain. It takes a long time to load up. It takes up a lot of space. It's slow and all that kind of stuff. So if I could do that stuff directly, and now on top of that, so I said Razer, but then my PC is using its own ICU, which is done by, I forgot what company it is, but you have so many, like every company has their own RGB flavor and formula. And sometimes they interact with each other and they can link up, which is cool when companies cooperate. But a lot of times you just have to run. So I have a separate app just for controlling the lights on the fans of my computer and the motherboard. I know first world problems. Like, do you need lights on your computer? Of course not. But it does look cool, and it's nice that something like that would be built into the computer, and it'll give you functionality right away. Shoot, I mean, HP is putting colored RGB keys into like some of its ZBooks, which are like workstations really meant for like engineers and stuff like that. But they have that's kind of cool, because they're mixing their own technology. And so a lot of this stuff, I think, it's another cool idea to make Windows, I think, a little bit more universal and just work with all this technology. So
Techosaurus Rex in the chat also mentions that there's an early implementation of Windows 365 boot and Windows 365 switch. Now, they aren't actually working correctly there, obviously, because one, you need a cloud PC for it to function, but two, I think it's missing an inbox app for it to actually be able to connect to a cloud PC anyway. But the actual sort of piping for, say, the handling of it when you're booting from boot screen before you hit the desktop, that does appear to finally sort of be almost ready and is sort of enableable in the dev channel build as well. So if you are a Windows 365 user, you've got that to look forward to. But for us normal people who don't have that money to be able to subscribe to an enterprise service like that, that's a non-news event. So yeah, I guess the last thing I mentioned about Windows for this week is obviously the schedule stuff. Moment 2 is basically done at this point. I believe it's supposed to be finalized by the end of this month. I think I even said this last week, but I'll say it again just in case. It's supposed to roll out in March or April. I believe it will be in the late March preview update, and then it'll be rolling out to everybody in April. And then Moment 3, which is when this RGB stuff may show up, is scheduled for May/June. So I assume that'll be finalized in May and then roll out in the June preview, late June preview, and then be GA for everybody in July. I assume. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But and then after that is obviously the 23H2 release, which would be technically Moment 4 to my knowledge, and that will be whatever that is. But that's the Windows 11 news.
Nice. Well, we got to take a momentary break so I can do an ad read. I know, not necessarily fun, but it does support our podcast, and we always appreciate that. And it's also a sign of validation that we're becoming more and more popular and important in the world as companies are willing to put their money where our mouth is. And so this week we're going to be talking about Indeed, which you've never heard of. Is when it comes to hiring, you need to trust your gut. But what if you could give your gut some help? Actually, this would be helpful for us. When you want to find top talent fast, you need Indeed. Hey, look at that. It rhymes. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills. when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. Hate waiting? Indeed's US data shows that over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. And now we're going to talk a little bit about that Instant Match, which they're very proud of. Candidates you invite to apply through Instant Match are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see it in search, according to US Indeed data. With Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description, and you can invite them to apply right away. Indeed knows when you're growing your business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Indeed knows that finding people with the right skills makes all the difference when you're hiring a team of one. Visit Indeed.com/WCP to start hiring now. Again, Indeed.com/WCP for the Windows Central podcast to make it easy. And, go hire some people. Actually, this seems like a pretty cool service. We always have had trouble hiring people because we're one of those companies where it's tech, it's cool, and it's a weird job to have, right? But when you put feelers out there like, hey, would you like to write? Of course, everybody's like, yeah, I want to write on tech and get free stuff and go to events. And it sounds great, but turns out it's work. It can be a lot of work. And some days you get up and you don't feel like writing on something. And it can always be difficult. So we tend to get a ton of applications from people who think it sounds good, but don't necessarily have the backgrounds to do it. Whereas something like us using Indeed and using that code WCP to get that discount would be very helpful. So there you go. Hopefully some of you people are starting your own businesses and can use this. At least now it's post-pandemic. Seems a little bit better to start a business. And Indeed, there's a job shortage out there right now. So you can probably actually get some quality people. So good stuff. As always, thank you Indeed for sponsoring the podcast. Let's move on now to Samsung, who a couple of weeks ago, they had their big Samsung Unpacked event, which is Samsung's no mystery. Whereas Microsoft held an event and no one knew what it was about, kept it all completely secret, Samsung tends to, everything leaks out. So they did announce the all-new S23 series, where they have a couple phones there, including the top-tier Ultra. And more relevant to us, they did announce, I think it's about 5 new laptops, the Galaxy Book 3 series. So there's a Book 3, a Book 3 Pro, Book 3 Pro 360. The Book 3 Pro comes in 2 sizes, a 14 and a 16-inch, I believe. And then there's the Book 3 Ultra, which is a brand new series that they have there. So the Ultra is the same kind of design. It's a new 16:10 display, 3K AMOLED display, but it actually has a GPU in it. So it's actually a much more powerful device that looks really sleek. Samsung did send me the Book 3 Pro 14-inch, which I'm actually really grateful about because that's the one I would have picked if I had to review one of these, because that's the 14-inch, which I prefer for the size. It also is the one that doesn't have a number pad. So we've joked about that in the past. I hate number pads. But the good news is a lot of these, the larger 16-inch ones all do have number pads with them. So I know a lot of people do enjoy those. So you might want to check those out. Which is kind of neat. So what's new about this? As I mentioned, they finally switched from 16:9 full HD AMOLED, which, don't get me wrong, was a really nice display because it's Samsung, but they finally upped it to the 3K resolution and made it 16:10.
Good.
Which looks way better. It's a really nice display. I'm not going to lie. And so I've been playing around with it. They have now a full HD web camera. They still don't have Windows Hello, partly because the bezels are so thin, but this is a fingerprint reader running 13th Gen P series processor. So it's a pretty powerful. That's the just below the H series, which is what you see in gaming laptops and workstations. So this thing, and I already did some benchmarks on it, which I didn't share, but I will shortly. But it's it's significantly faster than the 12th gen version. And battery life actually seems pretty solid so far. I'm actually pretty impressed. I almost took this with me to Microsoft's event, but I just wanted that 5G. So I ended up taking the Dragonfly again. And again, I almost then took the ThinkPad, but the I was like, oh, maybe I need a little extra horsepower this time.
You
Actually, I probably
didn't
should have taken
even.
the
Oh
ThinkPad.
yeah,
I would have been fine.
because I was gonna say you should have considered the Pro 9 5G, but then you said you needed power, so.
I did. I was going to. The Pro 9 was charged up, updated. That was on the list. This is like the Dan issues when I travel. It's like I literally have like this like existential dread of like which laptop do I take? And sometimes I take two,
Yeah.
because like, but uh, but yeah. So this is a really nice laptop. It's very thin. It's light. The keyboard's been great. The touchpad is massive on it. Audio is really nice. So I'm having a really good time using it. And like, I'll be comparing it to the Surface Laptop 5, which is almost not a fair comparison and I love the Laptop 5, and it pains me to sort of like be negative about it, but I don't see any reason why you would choose that over this laptop from Samsung. The Samsung one just has way more stuff, and it's just
Yeah.
seemingly better
It even
all
has
around.
like those nice rounded corners on the display, which was the first thing
Right.
I noticed. It looks really
Yeah.
nice. It's just nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's less like harsh, in
Yeah.
terms of the shape and stuff like that.
Round is in, guys. If you're building stuff and it's not round, then stop.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's a pretty good laptop. Hopefully I'll have the Dan review for that kind of shortly. And then I did ask Samsung. I was like, hey, can you send me the S23 Ultra? Since like you guys are doing so much phone stuff tied into the laptop. And it was funny. Their PR agent was like, exactly. She's like, I made that case. There's like, why don't we send them a phone? And they're like, nah, it's Windows Central. They don't care about phones. And I'm like, we've actually reviewed Samsung phones. Of all the phones out there, like those are the ones we actually do touch upon. Uh, and so she felt validated that I was right. So they sent me the S23 Ultra, which I have here. And I just got this only 2 nights ago. And I got the green version, which is really nice. And pleasantly surprised by it. I'll do a mini, not a review for this, but I'm going to do my kind of hot take impressions for it, but I'll share those here. This is basically the peak Ultra that I've seen. What I mean by that, this is everything that I've been wanting them to have in a device kind of in one finally. One, I love the new design in terms of it's much flatter and less curvy. And it feels more like it almost reminds me of the 1520, to be honest. It's kind of like the 1520, although I think it's smaller. I need to bust mine out than the 1520, but it has that same kind of shape and feel to it. Uh, the bezels, Zach, are just so thin on this thing. Like it's
Yeah.
all display. It's pretty crazy, and it's a gorgeous display. And this is one of the first times you could jack it up to that full resolution, which I forgot what it is because it's so crazy, and not lose the refresh rate. For those of you who probably remember, you used to be able to go like full HD plus and get the full like 144 hertz refresh, or you can go like really high resolution. Yeah. But then you go down to like 60 hertz. I was like, oh, wait, do I want to make that choice? You don't need to anymore. You can do either or. Pretty awesome. Uh, of course, it has a 200 megapixel camera on the back, which is absurd. That said, it's no joke. It's when you take pictures with it and you zoom in, the detail is absolutely insane. And I really do like the cameras on this thing. It's pretty fun. The CPU is great on it. Audio is good, and they built in the S Pen back again. I think that wasn't with the S22. It was a separate pen, so it now pops out from the chassis again. It's a little sticky one, so it's not ideal for long-term writing, but you wouldn't really do that in this device anyway. But it's great for quickly taking notes. They do have a great, this is where they're way ahead than Microsoft, when it comes to the Duo stuff. Like you can just use the pen to write in any text field, and then
Yeah.
it'll convert your writing to text. So would you use it all the time? I don't know, but I've used it a couple times and it worked really well. It kind of felt cool to do, and it would be nice if Microsoft could do that as well. Uh, and I like the colors. Oh yeah, and what's cool about the back, is the other thing that I really like. So of course I got the green, as I mentioned. It's matte, so it's technically like a glass. I don't know what they made it out of, but it doesn't show fingerprints. I mean, it does a little bit, but not like compared to
It's
when
good.
it's the glossy
This
glass.
is the thing I complain about the Duo. I wish the Duo had matte glass on the back because
Yep.
especially for the black one, that thing is a
Yep.
grease magnet. Whereas if it had glass like Samsung, it would basically repel most of it, which is really
Yep.
nice.
Yeah, I mean, technically you could see a little bit of, but I mean, yeah, it really does hide the fingerprints well compared to
Yeah.
every other version. Then the buttons feel great; they're in the right positions. Like, I mean, And the fingerprint reader is crazy. It's weird because it's very fast and
Yeah, in-screen fingerprint readers are so good now. Like when they first
yeah.
launched, I remember I had a OnePlus. Was it a 6T? Whichever the first OnePlus was with an in-screen fingerprint reader, it wasn't good, and I was sad, and I was like, "This is not going to work." And then it got better, and now that, especially Samsung's one, because they are ultrasonic, whereas I think OnePlus and others use under display like cameras for it still. But the ultrasonic one on the Samsung is insane. It's just like you just tap it and it's in. It's like wow.
Yeah, yeah. It's gotten really, really good. And so the display just looks phenomenal. Like it is a really nice thing. And all the features are pretty good. Yeah, people made it a joke, there's a thing that all of Samsung's bloat and the Android is like 60 gigabytes. It's actually bigger than Windows 11, which says something. I will say it doesn't feel slow at all, though. I mean, this thing actually is very responsive and smooth, so you don't notice it. Plus, um, this version has 512 gigs of storage, and they kind of, I think it starts at 256 gig now. They don't do a
Yeah,
128,
that's right.
and they're giving out free storage upgrades,
Yep.
like 60 gig out of 512. I do not care. Do not care. I'm never going to use 512 gigs. Now, I won't even go past 100 gigs probably because so much I do, all my photos go to the cloud and stuff, so I don't really care.
Yeah.
And I stream on Spotify. In a battery life, like I said, I've only had it for a couple of days, but the battery life feels very strong on this. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, I was like 80%. And granted, that wasn't like super heavy user, but I threw my main SIM in it. Now, the question is, would I get this over the Pixel 7? Because I've been kind of a big fan of the Pixel 7. It's only $599. That's tough. I mean, I really like the Pixel 7. It does even cool. I love the Song ID stuff that's built into what Google does with the Pixels. That is, it just as it's just sitting there, it can just ID music and it saves it to a list for you. I love that feature. I use it all the time. The camera is still redonkulously good. If you look at the live blog I did for this week's Microsoft event, all those were taken from the Pixel 7, which is crazy because it's like, I think about, I've been live blogging for a very long time, and it's like crazy to be able to just do that from a smartphone and have photos that are that good. And the price, it's $599. Now, you don't get the pen and inking, it's a smaller display, and all that is true too, but it's a big price difference between $599 and $1,200. And the question is that delta price difference worth it in terms of functionality? It's a tough one. I will say Samsung has a very aggressive trade-in program, making it, if you have an S22 or S21, I would say it actually makes it worth your time to do the trade-in and get the S23 from them. If you're just going in cold, it's a little bit harder. They will still take trade-ins from iPhone and all that other stuff. I don't know if you get as much, although they've been pretty aggressive in that as well. But the pricing there gets to be a challenge. And that said, I'm using this. I ended up yesterday putting my primary SIM into it because I have two, and that should tell you something. Like I'm just like,
Yeah.
it's a damn good phone. Like
Say
if you're thinking about getting it and the price doesn't bother you, or if you can get a good trade-in price, I'm not seeing any showstoppers here at all. Like this thing is pretty solid. The only thing is I need a case. I don't want a case, but I literally had a dream last night, and this was based off of reality, that I was in my car and I got out of my car and then the phone slipped out of my pocket and hit the pavement and got all damaged. But because it was a dream, it had damage. It was like the phone became wavy, which is impossible. But I remember still being just like really like, I just got this and I was so sad. I'm like, oh, I should just put a case on it. That was actually based on reality, though. I actually did that once to, I think it was the Lumia 1020. I actually got out of my car and I was going to meet Nokia, and I got in the
oh
car and I think I told the story. I was getting out of the car and there was the person who like parks your car for you, what do they call and I got out and it just fell and it just smashed right in front of both of us. And I'm like, well, that sucks. But I was able to go into the meeting and be like, by the way, could I get another 1020? And they did send me another one. So that worked out for me. But yeah, so I have their official leather case coming in Monday, I believe it is, Monday or Tuesday, which we'll see how that is. It'll add bulk to it, which I'm not a fan of, but we'll see. It's either that or the latter case, the carbon fiber one, which I still may get
yeah.
too, but we'll see. Yeah,
I was
what do
gonna
you think about all the Samsung stuff? I mean,
yeah, I was gonna say I think they've gotten a lot better over the years. I remember when Samsung with the Galaxy S8 and the S9, I really wasn't a fan of their software. The early versions of One UI was not to my flavor. Over time, it's gotten better and better, and I think One UI 5 is no longer offensive to me. And as you're saying, you was comparing it to the Pixel 7 and stuff. I think really it comes down to. If you're in the Microsoft ecosystem, I still think the Galaxies are still the better choice because of those integrations
right.
and partnerships with Microsoft. And it's not just the fact that some apps are preloaded, but it's also the fact that the Gallery app, for example, on Samsung devices,
Right.
ties in with OneDrive, and it's the only phone that does that outside of the Duo. If you
Yep.
buy a Google Pixel or a OnePlus or a Nothing phone, for example, it's all using Google Photos. And I'm sure you can download OneDrive and have it back up like that, but Samsung has
Yeah.
a native photo viewing experience that ties into OneDrive, and it doesn't talk to Google ever, and that is really nice. And I think that's one of the really sort of big selling points, as well as obviously the
Good
phone
point.
link enhancements with whatever additions
And
Samsung
phone
gets that
link not
nobody
only
else has.
built in, yeah, not only is it built in, but it's built into the drawer, the pull down drawer,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is kind of cool for quick
Yeah,
access. Yeah.
it's
Um,
interesting. Obviously, I'm done with the Duo. I'm moving on from it. I was toying around with the Nothing phone for a bit, but it was not. I like the phone. I like the hardware, but again, none of those Microsoft integrations are there. So I was gonna buy the Galaxy S23 Plus, and I was hovering over it. I was waiting. I was like, I'm gonna do this. Then I was like, no. And then I bought a Galaxy Fold. So that's what I have now.
just now you bought a Galaxy Fold?
Well, I've got it in my hand. I bought it earlier this week, so it's still new to
Oh,
me.
okay.
But yeah, it's nice. It is nice. I do like the color. I got this grey green. I actually really like this color. It's a very weird color, but I do enjoy it a lot. Oh, Dan, we've lost Dan. Dan, are you there? He's gone. Let me see if I can get him back. Okay, so Dan's PC blue screened, which is quite interesting. So I apologize for the video disappearing, but Dan's PC has literally decided to not work currently. So let's give him a second to get back. We'll give him a sec. So yeah, well, I guess since we, oh, he may have lost his recording as well. I just realised that ain't good. Right. So what was I saying? Yes. So the Galaxy Fold 4. Yeah, this is the latest Galaxy Fold. The reason I got it was because based on the pricing, that there was a deal going on. It was only like £100 more than the S23 Ultra, and I was like, I don't think I can go back to a non-foldable at this point. So I just thought, why not? And I went for it, and now I've got it. And I'm still using it. I was a Galaxy Fold 1 user for about a year. I bought that in December 2019, before the Duo 1 came out, of course. I switched to the Duo permanently from September 2020 to now, basically. So I went from the Galaxy Fold. Actually, I went from the Galaxy Note 10 Plus to the Galaxy Fold to the Surface Duo 2, now back to a Galaxy Fold 4. And yeah, all the improvements versus the Galaxy Fold 1 are amazing, of course. But yeah, I do miss dual screens. I do. The whole taskbar thing's nice, but it's still not an automatic multitasking experience. I've also just realised that my taskbar's not even on. There we go. But yeah, like I said, the only reason I went for this and not say like a Huawei Mate View, no, not Huawei, Xiaomi Mate. What is it? The Xiaomi Mi Mix 2 Fold. Oh, here he is. Hi, welcome back.
Thank you.
I'm assuming you lost your voice recording.
Your assumption would be correct.
Okay.
Unless
so I guess we'll have to pull from the YouTube video.
Yep.
All right.
Wow. Yeah, I was hoping it would save it where it was, but nope. Nothing.
R.I.P. All right. Well, anyway, as I was saying, yeah, I've actually forgotten what I was saying. Something about the Duo and the Galaxy. Yeah, the multitasking on it isn't automatic. We talked about it before, but And it's certainly not the best foldable. I still think that goes to the Xiaomi Mix Fold 2. But because of those Microsoft integrations, the fact that the Gallery app is basically powered by OneDrive and does all that syncing for you is what led me to do this. And also, this supports, just like the S23 Ultra and the Surface Duo, it supports Pen, and as such, it's a great OneNote device. Like, there aren't many devices on the market that support Pen on Android, and these are the only few that do. And so that's another reason why I went for this. I've also got the Pen kit on the way for this. So yeah, those are the reasons. But it primarily comes down to the Microsoft stuff. The fact that it is basically a Surface phone as much as it can be through a partnership with Samsung. And outside of the Duo, we've discussed it before. A lot of the time, the Galaxy phones, including the Fold, have more features than the Duo, have more integrations, have more functionality with Windows because of that partnership. There's an exclusivity deal there, I assume, where even Microsoft's own hardware isn't allowed to get in on the fun. So, yeah, if you're looking for a phone that works best with your Windows PC, the Galaxy S23 series or the S23 Ultra, if you're into slab phones, or the Galaxy Fold if you're into foldables, are your best bets. Even the Galaxy Flip, both Dan and I love the Galaxy Flip. Dan used the Galaxy Flip 3 for a while. I had the Galaxy Flip 1, and I loved those devices very much as well. So all of Samsung stuff is just great right now. And if you're a Windows Microsoft ecosystem user, these are honestly the best choices for you.
Someone's asking what PC am I using? It's a custom built one. It's a Core i9 13th gen. The top tier H series, whatever there it is.
And then I'm a
GeForce 4080. I don't know. Yeah, something. My insider build is preview, so it's not really, some super advanced build. But yeah, I don't know. Hopefully Microsoft figures it out because they got the information.
What I will say about this Galaxy Fold, you are right. I remember you complaining about this when you got yours briefly. Opening it's really hard.
Yep.
Oh dear. I hope when Microsoft does its foldable, it fixes that. I don't know how you can fix that, but the Duo's not hard to open, so just do what they did on the Duo.
Yeah, and you have to pry apart.
Yeah, you do. You've got to dig in there. It's like,
yeah, and it's like it slowed me down and prevented me from wanting to use the folding part, because then that outer display is like just right there. It was just more convenient, and it's just like, wait, what am I doing here with this?
But
the hardware is like, their hardware is beautiful. That's the thing. It's sort of like the iPad for me, right? It's like when I look at an iPad, I'm like, damn, that thing's awesome. I wish I could use it, but I can't. And the Fold, I kind of felt that same way too. If it opened up a little bit easier and some of the other, because the way it folds too, because I said it's a gold brick in your pocket. That's what it felt like. It's so heavy and just you had to put a case on it, in my opinion, because it's so slippery when it's in your pocket. Like I said, it's like a gold metal brick with curvy edges that it could easily slide out of your pocket. So then you put a case on it, which definitely gives you more grip and makes it easier to hold. But then, whoa, that makes it way bigger. That's why that's the problem with cases when you have big phones. And it was funny because the Lumias never felt like I needed to put a case on them, right? Isn't that strange? Like a Lumia 1520, I was never like, oh, I need to put a case on this thing. That never even dawned on me. It just, I don't know, I didn't feel like I needed a case on them. But because these are metal and everything like that, I feel like I do. And we'll see how I like this leather case for the S23 Ultra. I have a feeling it's going to be a really nice leather case. And it's green, it matches it, which is kind of cool. But I also feel like it's going to be like, I have the leather case for my iPhone mini, but that could be bigger. I don't care about that, but this is already a big phone, so we'll see how the leather case does. That's cool that you got the Fold. At least you're, we both talked about the Duo. It's nothing against the Duo too. It's just that we're techie people, and we want after a year, we kind of want something new. So kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that's all I have to say, really.
Well, congratulations. All right, I think that does it for the podcast this week. I don't think we have a thing of the week. My thing was flying on Delta, which was pretty good because I got bumped to Comfort Plus on the way out there. That got bumped to first class on the way home, which was really nice. So that was cool. But other than that, I was just flying, and everything went well, though. Went smoothly. That's the only thing I can say. It was a smooth week, so nothing went wrong, and it was kind of cool seeing what Microsoft is doing. So maybe we'll have something next week. Now I'll think of something for next week. It's fine. Other than that, yeah, we'll do Q&A with the audience now. So for the live podcast, you guys could start asking questions that we didn't answer during the podcast, and we'll go ahead and take those. But if you're listening to this recorded, well, you don't get to hear that part, but you can join us every Friday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on our YouTube channel at Windows Central. You can also go back there and see the previously recorded videos there as well. As always, follow me on Twitter, Daniel_Rubino, and follow Zach at ZACBOWDEN. Almost had it there. And we'll see you next time. Take care, everyone. And let me hit stop recording. Oh.
Real quick, Dan, did you for getting when you got access to the new Bing, did you fill out that form they sent to you, or did you just tell them in person?
No, I actually did the. They did ask for my MSA.
Yeah, in person.
No, it was when I was registering for the events, and then but I don't know if that was for that. And then I did just fill out the thing on the bing.com/new. I just did that.
Okay.
Because then we had an email and it said,
Yeah.
click this and fill out your info. I didn't do that.
You didn't do that and you still got access. Okay, so I did fill that form out and nothing happened.
Yeah.
So I just emailed them now. They got back to me asking if I signed up for the public preview. And I was like, yeah, but that's not what I'm asking for. I'm asking for the press one. So
Yeah,
we'll see what
but
they
me.
say. I've just replied back.
Yeah, well, hopefully you'll get it. And then you can make the video.
Yep. Thoughts on Zoom laying off 1,300 employees? At least they are admitting that they have made mistakes throughout the process. I did not catch that story, but to be fair with you, I am not surprised given the massive
They lay
growth
off a
they
lot
had.
of people.
Yeah, the massive growth they had, and obviously that was not going to be sustainable. And now, yeah, they're probably overhired big time for what their business really is. So,
That's what happened everywhere.
yep.
Even Microsoft, though they laid off a lot of people, they're technically have more employees now than they did pre-pandemic still. But a lot of companies, I don't even know if I want to say overhired. They were simply reacting to demand. But the question was like, all right, obviously demand's going to fall off at some point, but how steep of a fall is that going to be? And that varies from industry to industry, right? It seems like tech is being hit the worst versus other areas are kind of growing. We had our jobs report recently was extremely positive. So how you balance that was tough, and no one knew what was going to happen next. So I feel bad, but at the same time, those were completely unprecedented events that happened. But yeah, it sucks if you're caught up in that. And companies, that's the first thing they do, right? Cutting people out is the quickest way to save immediate money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If the foldable screen can only fold 180 degrees for now, Microsoft should put it on the outside instead of the inside when folded. That would eliminate the need for the wasteful extra screen. It is something that they certainly considered. The only problem with it is durability. These foldable screens are still more scratch prone than glass screens because they are soft. They are plastic. Now, they're not, I wouldn't call them fragile screens. Like, I'm not afraid to poke this screen. But certainly if it was on the outside, moving it around on a desk, putting it in and out your pocket, it would scratch up a lot easier and there would be dings in it, more so than if you were using glass. So that's why it's not a great idea. Huawei has a device where the screen's on the outside and it's just prone to more damage. It's just asking for trouble, essentially. Whereas at least on the inside, it protects it when it's closed. And you still get that nice, real sort of glass screen on the outside.
Did we discuss about Microsoft no longer providing Surface Duo 2s for RMAs and are refunding purchases instead? Yeah.
Like a month ago story.
Yeah. So yes, and it varies from market to market, but yeah.
You can still buy the Duo 2 brand new from the Microsoft Store in the UK for an eye-watering £1,300. You should not buy it.
What do you think about the new Bing versus Google's Bard? Oh, we should have talked about that. Explore and Discover. Just that's 50, literally 50 minutes of the beginning of the podcast. So if you just go back and you'll hear everything.
Does Windows require a license? Sorry, go on.
The S Pen case on the Z Fold is a bit clumsy. Oh, that's not a question. Yeah,
It is, yeah, you're right. But so is the Duo 2's pen cover. I wouldn't say it's a slim or sleek experience, especially when you have to attach the other half with adhesive.
I do like I do like Microsoft's solution better, but I thought it was
Yeah.
clever what Samsung did too. So
hmm Does Windows 11 require a license for the OEMs? This is why they don't always include it. I don't know if it requires a license. It wouldn't surprise me. But no, most of the time, no, because a lot of the time, if it's
must.
not face, they've got a fingerprint reader, and I assume the license would be the same regardless. It's
Yeah.
usually because the bezels are so thin that it doesn't make sense for them to sort of work that out. you
It's
know,
also cost.
yeah, it's cheaper.
It's
A
way more
fingerprint readers are
expensive to
cheap as
do an
chips.
IR camera
Yeah,
than it is to do a fingerprint reader. And depending on the laptop, they want to save money.
yeah.
Um, you know. Did you all see a new Skype on Android feature called True Voice AI? Use your own voice during a translated Skype call. Yeah, that was talked about. We didn't talk about it, but yeah, that news has been around for a little while. Will
Well,
the Xbox division have access to OpenAI? I assume so, but it's a weird question. It
yeah.
depends what they want to do with it. I don't know how that would help Xbox. And OpenAI is the company, not the product. ChatGPT is the product. So I'm not sure what you mean. Someone's asking about Huawei phones. I love Huawei phones. I think they make amazing hardware, but yeah, they got hit with the embargo. And if you buy one now, you can't install Google Play services on it, which makes it effectively useless in the United States. You can, of course, put Microsoft stuff on it, apps and everything. That helps, but a lot of people still want Gmail, YouTube app, or even
Yeah.
just Google Maps, right? And that stuff won't work without. And in theory, you can hack that stuff on, but it's gotten harder and harder with every new. If you get a new phone, it takes like months before someone kind of maybe figures it out, and then it's still sketchy. So it's a real shame. Honor phones, Huawei phones, I was a big fan of them, but they got that thing with the Chinese government. So
I downloaded the Insider Beta in the last few days. Am I on the next major release? I am confused on features I have and don't have with the beta. So the beta channel is not the next air quotes major release of Windows. It's the next moment update for Windows. So those are essentially feature drops that sit on top of the in-market version of Windows 11, version 22H2. The beta channel is currently testing Moment 2, which is supposed to be finalized this month. The dev channel is obviously Moment 2 stuff, but it's now starting to get stuff for Moment 3. So if you wanted Moment 3 access right now, you'd be on dev. If you wanted Moment, just whatever's coming in Moment 2, you'd go to beta. And Moment 2, I'd recommend staying on beta. It's just better than dev these days, if I'm honest.
So this is just interesting news, not related to tech, but still a little scary. The sun has always fascinated astronomers, and now a new development has baffled scientists. A huge part of the sun broke off its
I beg your
surface
pardon.
and created a tornado-like swirl around its north pole. And then there's the question: impact Earth?
Hope not.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe part of the sun may be hitting Earth, whatever that means.
Will/does the Bing chat allow voice input via mic? I don't know. I don't see why it wouldn't. I mean, it would just be dictation essentially at that point, right?
Hmm. Did the Dolly integration of Bing happen? No, not yet.
That is coming
That's
though.
still,
They did say
yeah,
they announced that ages ago, so it's on its way. Wasn't that bing.com/create?
yeah, I think so. Who owns what is produced by OpenAI Bing Search? Is it you or will it be OpenAI Microsoft? I mean, I I don't know what you mean by own because like the Bing search isn't going to like create new work for you like what ChatGPT kind of does. It's search, and that's what Prometheus is. It's based for search and doing things like that. Um, do you own your tweet? If you tweet it and it's text, I think you own it, even though AI might have written it. So
Oh, so I
Relaunch
do.
Cortana Chat GPT? Question mark. We talked about it on the podcast.
So I do have access to the Bing image creator. I just don't have access to the actual Bing AI.
So
Oh, interesting. All right, last call for questions. If there are no more questions, we will head off. I now have to figure out how to download this entire stream off YouTube so I can get the audio from it.
wait, hold on. I'm gonna ask one of these questions into Bing. The
The chat
let's see.
questions.
We're going to ask it, who owns what is produced by OpenAI Bing Search? Is it you or will be OpenAI Microsoft? Let's see what Bing says. It's searching.
I don't know.
Searching.
Question is too hard.
That's an interesting question. According to the web results, OpenAI is owned by a consortium of investors co-founded by Tesla CEO Elon Musk, Y Combinator President Sam Altman, Reid Hoffman. Blah, blah, blah. Microsoft is planning to invest $10 billion. The answer is 60%. They made 2%. Bing is a web search engine owned by operator Microsoft. Its origins, Bing is the world's second large engine. Yeah, it doesn't answer.
I'm curious. Can you ask it? I don't know. Let me try and think of a risky question that you could ask on the stream. Can you ask it best ways to pirate? I don't know, a TV show. What's a big TV show? I just want to see what it will say.
Yeah.
And I probably won't say, yeah, here's how to do it. I just want to see what it says.
Say the
ask it
latest
how
movie.
to pirate the Last of Us TV show or something. I just want to see how it tells you that's a bad thing to do. It's gonna be like, you wouldn't download a car.
It says, I am now reporting you to the authorities.
Yeah, right.
Please do not
The
leave
police
your house.
are on their way.
I'm sorry, but I cannot help you with that. Pirating TV shows is illegal and unethical, and it harms the creators and distributors of the content. The Last of Us TV series is based on the video game of the same name, blah, blah, blah. It's supposed to, then it just goes
So
in.
it's being quite hypocritical with the whole stealing content thing. It's like, yeah, you shouldn't do that as it steals content from the web.
If it says if you want to watch the show legally, you can subscribe to HBO or a streaming service, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
You should be like, can you be illegal for me? I want bad Bing AI. All right, there's no more questions, so we are going to head off. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We will be back next Friday. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated when we go live. But until then, we will see you next time. Bye.